It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I am glad to be here this morning with you. You're joining us in the third of our 4 segments this morning, and we've been discussing two earlier segments, the Bundy Ranch and how it is to be the start, the historical start, going back in history now, assuming that we can get Common Core out of the classroom. We might actually see the history books properly reflect the Bundy Ranch issue for what it was. That is the beginnings of a new American Revolution, one that will incorporate, the vast American populace outraged at the abuse of federal government, whether they sit on the left or the right or the liberal or the conservative ideological side, and 2, the use of force to withstand the onslaught. Now, in our second segment, we talked about a new study by Princeton and Northwestern University that empirically and emphatically declares that the United States government is no longer representative of the principles of republicanism, but that it is now an oligarchy. Wow. I mean, Princeton and Northwestern would be construed by anyone to be among the bastions of liberal academia. In this segment, we're going to talk about one of the ways in which the government is applying pressure to us and using force and, quite frankly, violence to achieve their ends, and how you have an opportunity, amongst other things, to begin to fight back against this using the tactics we're talking about. 1, starving that which is, quite frankly, paying for our demise. In other words, in order for an oligarchy or a corporatocracy to work, the corporate entities and the ultra-wealthy individuals who, for all intents and purposes, are steering us in policy and what have you, those individuals are using money to accomplish that goal, to remake and to commission. Think of it like that, right? They're commissioning a piece of art to be drawn up in the image that they perceive the United States to be, or what they would like it to look like. Our job, our goal, is to thwart that by any means necessary. And one of the ways in which we can do that is not only by starving the beast of the government itself by taxation, where that is how they're instituting your own demise by making you pay for it, but also by going after the assets and the corporations who have the resources to pay government to implement their envisionment of whatever tyrannical disaster they've got planned for us. Now, you have to realize that the title of this segment is "The IRS is going to track your vehicle." Now, really, what does that have to do with taxation? Well, you see, it's not really. The reason I put that in there is because I wanted to draw your attention to it. But it's only one of multiple facets of this blood diamond. And when I say a blood diamond, I mean it's a diamond tainted with the blood of Americans. You are being stripped. You are being, the very lifeblood of the nation is being drawn off. How do I mean that? Well, I posted an article up this morning on our website and Facebook page and so forth about how today the average credit card percentage of interest is a stunning 21%, ladies and gentlemen. When you sign on for a new credit card, forget that 6-month window where there's no interest or any other nonsense. If you read the fine print and you look at the interest rate that you're paying on credit cards, the banks are squeezing you for every last possible drop of blood from the American consumer. They're only one microcosm of the corporatocracy that are doing that to you. But realize that they are in large part taking the profits and they are funding the corporatocracy of government that has become the oligarchy that we hate and abhor. They're using your own money to bribe politicians and officials and policy that is directly resulting in your enslavement. Hello? The point of all of this is that we need to begin to think of how we monkey wrench our way into causing damage to those who are either open participants or assistive of our enslavement. You can monkey wrench the system. You can do that in large part by refusing to play the game by their rules. First and foremost, any one of you who are listening to the sound of my voice right now, if you do not realize that eliminating credit cards from your life is wise, I guess that's the basic premise that you must accept. In other words, debt is the primary cause of your enslavement. And it's the primary method to keep you from breaking free and swimming to the surface. It's like a stone, a millstone about your neck. You cannot escape the clutches of the lender when you are indebted to them, because you are consistently forced to bend to their will in order to accomplish the payback of that debt. And they know it, and that's why they've applied it that way. Eliminate credit cards from your life. Period. End of argument. I'm not saying that you can't keep one for emergencies, car rentals, a hotel, you want to go on vacation, those kinds of things. I mean, there are times when a credit card is necessity almost in our daily lives. And I'm not suggesting that, we all fall back into the 1800s and start riding horses and, become Amish. But there should be no debt in your life, which means that credit card should only be used for the most absolute minimal necessities or requirements in which you have it, and that you pay it off immediately, and that you take all the rest of them that you own and cut them up. Why? Because banks are living on you. And they're taking the profit of you as they farm you. You are the crop. Don't you see? You're the crop. They farm you, and the fruit that you bear is 21% interest. They take that 21% interest and they turn around and they give it to a politician to influence his decisions, applying to banking rules themselves. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, it's an insane cycle of destruction. How can I say that? Well, did you know that a Bank of America has just agreed to pay $727 million over their illegal credit card practices? That's $727 million. Did you know that Bank of America has agreed to pay out a second $800 million settlement to the Consumer Fraud and Protection Bureau? By the way, you're not getting any of that. Hello. Here's what you have to realize. These credit card companies are, the average interest rate is 21%. That's up 2% over what it used to be just a year ago as an average. What you don't realize is that they are, first of all, if you committed fraud to the level of $1.5 billion dollars, $1.5 billion, that's what Bank of America, you'd be in jail for life. You'd be Bernie Madoff. Why is it that Bank of America just pays a fine, which is, for all intents and purposes, only a portion of the profits that they've gained? Because they've gone to the legislators and paid to make sure that their senior executive management don't go to jail. The truth is, you'd go to jail. Allowing a corporation to escape prison time for fraud and theft by deception is unconscionable. Allowing any corporation to get away with that is irresponsible. It is unethical, immoral, illogical. These corporations that are providing products and services and then using the money from those products and services to fund your demise and enslavement should be removed from the equation. Vigilant. This is a company who is providing license plate tracking services, not just for the IRS, but you won't believe this. The IRS and other agencies awarded $415,000 in contracts to this company, and its offices like Forest Service, U.S. Air Force Air Combat Command. Why is Vigilant, a closely held company, gaining contracts which look, this is the equivalent. I want you to draw this analogy. You are in Europe. You live in Europe. You are in a Nazi-occupied nation. France. Pick it. I mean, it doesn't have to be France. It could be Poland. It could be any other country. And it doesn't have to only be the Nazis. It could have been the USSR. You are under occupation by an enemy. What do you do? Well, the first thing that you do is, as a partisan, you attempt to work to undermine the actual pillars of the infrastructure that is causing your nation to be enslaved. It's called partisanship. Not partisanship as in, I'm a Democrat, you're a Republican. Partisanship is as in the resistance. And that's what I want you to walk away from this with. Vigilant, a closely held company based out of, I believe they're in California. And correct, I could be wrong, but it doesn't even matter. We can find them. Here's the point. Vigilant has received these contracts, all of them since 2009, with the advent of the usurper-in-chief. Jay Johnson, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, he ordered the cancellation of an immigration agency plan that was aiming to buy access to national license plate data. The point is that Vigilant owns all of this plate data, and they sell it to government agencies. If you lived in occupied Poland, if you lived in occupied Denmark, if you lived in occupied Sweden, if you lived in occupied France, I'm going to tell you that at the time of World War II, what people did as partisans in those days was to go out and find the perpetrators and change their behavior, and failing that, they just removed them. Now, am I suggesting and inciting you to go create some kind of an illegal? Of course not. What I am saying is that Vigilant should be exposed for who and what they are, and that we and the people in the state where Vigilant is headquartered, which I believe, and I'll find out for you exactly where they are, but my point is that the state where that is hosted, where that company is based out of, should be doing everything in their power to apply all the pressure to put them out of business. I don't care what the excuse is. Find a reason to investigate them. Find a reason to shut them down for health care, for the Department of Health. Find a dirty cafeteria. Go in there and find a building code violation and shut them down. They're only one example. There are literally tens of thousands of companies around here that are doing that are working against you, supporting, aiding, and abetting the enemy of the people of the United States of America. Some of them are vast corporatocracies. Some of them are these tiny companies. But I'm telling you that you and I need to recognize that we can apply the same pressure back that they're applying to us. We can expose these people. Protest in front of the senior management of Vigilant, and let's make sure that that there are protests set up in front of their home, and that there are articles written in newspapers around the nation about them. And I'm going to try to find Vigilant. All I can find is, all right, I'll have to find it at a later date for you. I can't find it immediately. My point is this. They're gaining these contracts for selling your information. So stop them from selling your information. Are you in charge of the utility company in the area? When they fail to get their electric bill in on time and they're 1 hour late, shut them off. Hello. When you are the city utility master and they have failed to pay their water bill, shut it off. Don't give them 5 minutes of leeway. Put in the order immediately and terminate their service. You see, there are a million ways in which you can do harm to them legally, peacefully. I'm not suggesting that we resort to something else. I am telling you that they're using these systems, they're using these methodologies to injure us. And at this point, ladies and gentlemen, it's now self-defense. It is now self-defense. The Forestry Service, the Department of Agriculture, these are agencies which use vigilant services. The Department of Agriculture? I mean, why do they have to track you? They scan license plate numbers, they compare the data to law enforcement lists of wanted vehicles, and they send alerts when such vehicles are detected, according to the company's website. You see, the problem that we have is that we have traitors among us. And like the occupied nations of Europe from World War II, we should be taking a lesson in partisanship. Because they were occupied on a level in which they were killing their populace, I'm not suggesting that we need to resort to that same level of action. But there are plenty of ways in which pressure can be applied to expose these people for what they are. And either force them out of business, find an excuse and a way in which you can file a lawsuit against them. Just tie them up in the courts. It's called monkey wrenching, sand in the gears. Shut their power off. Shut their water off. If you are a person who is sitting on a city council, find that they have extended beyond their authority within the community boundaries that you have, or whatever it is. I don't care what it is. Find ways, if you're where Vigilant is, find ways that you can prohibit these companies and cause them pain. It's the death of 10,000 cuts. It's not one cut. It's the death of 10,000 cuts. File a Freedom of Information Act. Now, they're a closely held company. So what information do they have on you? File a lawsuit to find out. They're going to deny a Freedom of Information Act. They're going to say, we're not a government agency. We don't have to respond to that. And we're privately held. We're not even open to the public. So we don't have to give you any information at all. Okay, great. Well, I have standing in the court, and I'm going to file a lawsuit to find out exactly what you do have about my license plate and who gave you authority to capture it. I don't care if you do it under flippin' copyright law. Figure out a way. Pay some attorney if you have to, or find an attorney who's actually constitutionally aware. I know there's only about 11 of them in the country, but find one of the 11 and get them to help you. The point is, we have to find out who the traitors are amongst us and shut them down. And there's a number of ways that we can do that. I don't know what other companies Vigilant is involved in. I don't know what other... There's another company... well, all right, look, here's the point. The point is that we have to start playing and taking an active role in resistance as partisans, monkey-wrenching the system every way, everywhere, any way that we can. Whatever it takes, ladies and gentlemen. Whatever it takes. Do it legally. Do it peacefully. We're not going to go out there and commit violence. I'm not suggesting that we should. I'm not saying that there's no place for violence. I'm telling you that now is not the window for that. I've had people say to me, "Why do you say that?" Well, because if I don't, one of two things: I'll either be accused of inciting violence, or I'm accused by those who would support violence, inaccurately, by the way, that there is a place for violence. Of course there is. It's not yet. Will it come to that? I believe it will, but today's not that day. That's the truth, folks. Today's not that day. There are a lot of things that we can do to drag Gulliver down. The question is, are we willing to do it, or are we going to wait for, the inevitable to happen? Are we going to allow these companies that are growing up around us to become tyrannical on their face while we are paying the price? Folks, a decision is going to have to come down to you. There's no mass group that's going to organize, and as we just learned from the previous segment, there's no group that's going to really come up here and save your butt. Either you're going to rise up and save it yourself, or you may as well kiss it goodbye. The problem is that in doing so, you're kissing it and all of future generations goodbye as well. I think you owe all of us better than that. We'll be back in just a moment.